Spike Lee's 1989 film Do the Right Thing conveys the strife and struggles of the Brooklyn neighborhood Bedford-Stuyvesant, made up of several ethnic groups that include African Americans, Italians, Koreans, and Puerto Ricans, all living with racist values and contorted notions of love and hate. The film revolves around the stereotypes of various ethnic backgrounds and purposefully uses these to expose the nature of 1980s America and the social issues associated with it, emerging from segregation and abolition, yet clinging to the mindsets which seek to keep these communities apart. Lee manipulates his deeply stylized cinematography to play with the constant escalation and de-escalation of conflict. In particular, the utilization of colors, lighting, camera angles, and staging causes the audience to wonder what exactly is the right thing to do. Thus, this scene from the film demonstrates how tensions, stereotypes, and community play a role into the dynamics of racism, both ingrained into individuals and into the societies that we live in. This scene begins with Mookie on the phone to his girlfriend. Soft lighting is used in this medium close-up. The use of diffuse lighting makes for gentler contrast between light and shade, yet still highlights the textures of surfaces. The visible sweat onto Mookie draws on the motif of heat used throughout the film to emphasize tension. The staging and character movements depict Mookie as nonchalant and dismissive of his girlfriend's nagging, eyes downcast, focusing on filing his nails more so than the conversation. The camera then zooms out and maintains a continuous shot from Mookie to a medium-long shot of both Mookie and Pino. As Pino answers the phone, the camera movements focuses on him and tracks his movements.
See, Daddy? Mookie's fucking talking on the phone. People are trying to call in orders. He's making us lose business. Mookie!
This mid-shot of style depicts the authenticity of the constructed setting. The cash register and the bowls in the kitchen behind adds to the atmosphere of a local and humble family business. Lee plays with the use of sound, more so the absence of it, as Sal aggressively mouths to Mookie, "Don't fuck it up." Tensions quickly rises as Pino mutters under his breath.
Stupid. If you see a nigga kick his ass.
The cut to Vito shows an attempt to de-escalate the situation.
Forget about it.
The use of hard lighting and low camera angles suggests that both these characters have a strong attitude in their power dynamics. The camera's positioning places us just outside of Mookie's perspective, and the camera distance and character staging makes us feel closer to Mookie than Pino.
Can I talk to you for a second?
Slow and soothing jazz music plays as Mookie confronts Pino. This further attempts to cool down the situation.
Magic Johnson.
In order to call out his racism, Mookie reveals that all of Pino's favorite celebrities are black people. Despite this, Pino tries to say that they aren't really black.
Prince. Bruce. Pino, all you ever talk about is nigga this and nigga that. And all your favorite people are so-called niggas. It's different. Magic, Eddie, Prince are not niggas. I mean, they're not black. I mean, let me explain myself. They're not really black. I mean, they're black, but they're not really black.
Pino appropriates the black culture so much that deep down it seems like he might even want to be black himself.
Pino, deep down inside, I think you wish you were black.
Get the fuck out of here.
Laugh if you want to. You know, your hair is kinkier than mine. What does that mean? And you know what they say about dark Italians?
You know, I've been listening.
This conversation is an example of cultural appropriation. Pino likes famous black people, favoring their culture and embracing their talents when it favors him, but rejects their identity and ethnic struggles. He goes on to make a mockery of famous black activists.
That's fucked up.
Keep hope alive.
Hey, that's fucked. Don't talk about Jesse.
And even the other guy, what's his name? Farrakhan.
Minister Farrakhan.
Sorry.
This scene references the quotes prior to the end credits, that violence is both impractical and immoral because it seeks to humiliate the opponent rather than to win his understanding. However, Mookie did try to win Pino's understanding, but it didn't work. The following scenes represent how hate and anger manifests in the absence of
Fuck
understanding.
your fucking pizza and fuck Frank Sinatra.
Yeah? Well, fuck you too, and fuck Michael Jackson.
After the heated conversation between Mookie and Pino, the extract continues with director Spike Lee cutting to a series of fourth wall breaks by different characters. But what are fourth wall breaks? Well, S.C. Lanham of Film School Rejects defines the fourth wall as the imaginary wall that separates the story from the real world. As a result, we treat the fourth wall as a sort of one-way mirror. What S.C. Lanham means by this is the audience can see and comprehend the story, but the story cannot comprehend the existence of the audience. However, when characters do in fact comprehend the existence of the audience, they are considered to be breaking the fourth wall. A famous example of this is Ferris at the end of John Hughes' 1986 film, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
You're still here? It's over.
Go home. Go.
Another notable fourth wall break in Do the Right Thing occurs when Radio Raheem tells the audience about the story of Right Hand, Left Hand, but more on that later. Now back to the extract. With their series of fourth wall breaks coming directly after Mookie and Pino's conversation, director Spike Lee makes use of the underlying tension behind the heated exchange and explores it in a series of racist monologues. In these fourth wall breaks, each character looks directly into the camera, angrily conveying racist dialogue toward a different race. Mookie against Italians, Pino against African Americans, Latino Stevie against Koreans, white police officer Gary Long against Puerto Ricans, and Korean store owner Sonny against Jews. It's also worth noting that each character addresses the audience in a place that they feel safe in. This reinforces the divisions that exist between the different races that reside in the neighborhood. As the characters stand still and spout racist stereotypes, the camera quickly closes in on them. In doing this, Spike Lee is attempting to put the audience in the headspace of the character. In a way, the camera acts as a mirror, exposing the audience to their previously held prejudices regarding each of the targeted races. Lee doesn't want to insult or shock the audience with the dialogue of the fourth wall breaks, but rather wants the viewer to recognize the similar opinions they may consciously or unconsciously hold. After we hear Korean corner store owner Sonny's thoughts on the neighborhood's Jewish community, Mr. Senor Love Daddy also breaks the fourth wall, but his message is very different, instead calling for a stop to all the hate.
Hold up! Time out!
The message from the sequence is that society can't get rid of racism if people are comfortable in harboring racist sentiments. What Mr. Senor Love Daddy says is more impactful because instead of pushing into his headspace, he pushes into ours. We want to associate far more with Love Daddy than the other characters from the series of fourth wall breaks, and Spike Lee knows this. He uses him to speak to our inability to change and our toleration of racism. Love Daddy is a voice of peace and equality, and Spike Lee is able to use his character to help ensure the viewer is left thinking about their own racial prejudices long after the film is finished.
Sal, can you do me a favor?
That depends, Wookie.
Can you pay me now?
I can't do that.
Following the series of fourth wall breaks, Lee returns the audience back to the pizzeria where Mookie, Sal, and an interjecting Pino converse about the chance of Mookie getting paid early this month. Despite Mookie's persistence, Sal declines to pay him, saying that if I pay you now, I won't see you tonight. As Sal works on his pizza and speaks with Mookie, the viewer can notice the presence of the warm colours that dominate much of the film. Here evident, among other things, in the red cans and orange glow on the back wall from the practical lighting of the shot. This, combined with the diffused illumination created by the use of soft lighting, highlights the scorching conditions on this hot summer day in Brooklyn. This part of the extract also helps to establish the lack of trust between Sal and Mookie, and more broadly, the lack of trust between all of the different factions in the neighborhood.
Following Sal's refusal to pay Mookie comes one of the film's most important sections. In unity with the rest of the film, the scene utilizes soft lighting and a stylistic and warm color grade as a result of the natural outdoor lighting. The scene opens with a bird's eye view shot of a little girl in the street, drawing with chalk on the road when suddenly Mookie walks right through it. She had a drawing of a happy house, the sun, and people. Meanwhile, right next to her is a cute little doll. This is a reminder to the audience of what this town could look like, what it should look like. Mookie could have walked around, but instead he walked straight through the drawing of happiness and love. This in itself just symbolizes this ongoing struggle between love and hate, which the characters are trying to grasp. Directly following this, we see Mookie run into Radio Raheem, a man who carries a boombox around the neighborhood, which is always playing Fight the Power by Public Enemy. Radio says he's on the way to Sal's, and Mookie catches notice of Radio's brass knuckles that blatantly read love and hate. The camera then reframes, coming front onto Radio as he gives a speech about the knuckles. The movie plays with dichotomies throughout, and Radio's famous love and hate speech, originally from Night of the Hunter, is used to underscore those dichotomies. The speech is designed to shape our understanding of Radio Raheem through the rest of the film, the importance of which frames the climactic scene of his death and the immediate aftermath towards the end of the film. Lee purposefully used this reframing to show how the conversation has been directed to the audience, emphasizing this concept of direct social commentary through a fourth wall break as the interview-esque type of shot becomes a recurring motif throughout the film. Radio is played as a quiet, intense man, and Lee uses this to express how he is interpreted differently to the different communities in the film. To the black community, he's a proud black man, wearing iconic graffiti art on his shirt from his neighborhood of Bedford-Stuyvesant. To the white, Hispanic, and Korean communities, he's perhaps seen as intimidating or menacing. Since we see him from the black perspective, we can understand that he is an honest-to-goodness street preacher, an apostle of the truth. Lee complements the character with music in a very interesting way. Radio is always listening to his boombox is not so much for him to listen to, but for everyone else around him. To turn it off as he entered the white-owned business that they had little choice about later in the film would be to surrender that message. In his speech, Radio says, "Let me tell you the story of right hand love and left hand hate. It's a tale of good and evil. The story of life is this, static. One hand is always fighting the other hand, whilst interlocking the love-hate fingers." This costume choice is explicit symbolism of Radio's dialogue and represents the overall theme of the film. The film is often written off as a message film, only serving as a statement on racism. But in this film, I believe Lee is posing a question rather than a statement. The question is not whether either love or hate are winning, but how can we live inside that struggle and come out on the other end, as shown by the ending of the film. Neither to love or to hate is the right thing to do. There are no absolutes.
In this next sequence, Radio Raheem is framed walking towards Sal's famous pizzeria. As Radio Raheem enters the restaurant, he turns up the song Fight the Power on his boombox. This song is a frequently featured motif and was released in the same year as the film Do the Right Thing. The group behind the song, Public Enemy, were important leaders in the American Civil Rights Movement, and the song starts with
1989, the number, another summer.
In the context of the history of race relations, 1989 was another year in a long struggle for equality for African Americans, but was also a year worthy of note as songs and films such as these discussed emerged in support of the civil rights movement. These are some of the themes that define the film, and thus it is important to note the very deliberate choice by Spike Lee to make Fight the Power the song that's constantly playing on Radio Raheem's boombox. By turning up Fight the Power before entering Sal's restaurant, Radio Raheem is intentionally making his beliefs loud and clear to Sal and his Italian family, who can't fully understand why community locals want the Hall of Fame in Sal's restaurant to feature African American heroes.
2 slices. Turn it up! Mr. Radio Raheem. I can't even hear myself.
During this next argument between Radio Raheem and Sal, both characters are shot using Dutch tilt to help portray unease in the scene and add dramatic effect to the argument. The use of loud music in conjunction with close-ups of angry facial expressions create and build tension between Radio Raheem and Sal, which ultimately foreshadows the climax of the film, Radio Raheem's death. The heat of the day adds to the heat of the argument, with both characters shown to be dripping in sweat as they yell back and forth. Sal ordering Radio Raheem to turn off the music is offensive to Radio Raheem, who resents Sal for not adapting his restaurant to complement the African American community in which it is situated. This is ultimately the cause of the big fight between Sal and Radio Raheem in the climax, as Radio Raheem tries to stand up and fight the power being Sal's pizzeria. In this next part, orchestral music is played as Mookie walks down the hustling streets of his hometown. The calm classical music is a juxtaposition to the busy hustle of the streets. The colour red can be seen everywhere in this scene, making audiences again feel the heat of the day, which is emphasised with an intense colour scheme and a red tinge overlay. Walking down the street, Mookie is dressed in a Dodgers number 42 jersey, which is notably a very deliberate costume choice of director Spike Lee's. The jersey that Mookie dons is a Jackie Robinson jersey. Robinson was an American professional baseball player who became the first African American to play in Major League Baseball in the modern era. Robinson broke the baseball color line when the Brooklyn Dodgers started him at first base in 1947. His number 42 jersey becomes a complex symbol of precarious racial politics and reflects Mookie being proud of his African American heritage.
Jay!
What? Mookie, how come you're not at Sal's?
I'm working.
What is this, Mookie? Another one of your patented 2-hour lunch
I
breaks?
wanted to come home and take a quick shower.
Hey, Sal's gonna get mad.
Don't wait for Sal. Sometimes I think you're more concerned about him and me, and I'm your own brother.
Yeah, Mookie, that's real smart. Sal pays you, Mookie. That's why you should work. Did you ever think about that?
Yeah, I work. Slavery days are over. My name ain't Kunti.
The extract ends in the next scene with Mookie arguing with his sister Jade about his responsibilities. Jade is one of the few characters who appreciates the things Sal does for their community, including employing her brother Mookie. It is clear by her apartment and encouragement of Mookie to take care of his responsibilities that Jade knows the value of hard work. Spike Lee uses Jade as a comparison to Mookie, who isn't a hard worker and doesn't appreciate the job he has with Sal.